Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world, wherever you're zooming in from. Today, we have a really fun group talking about a very important topic. How do you build a trusted network? Why would you build a trusted network? How do you get value out of that? And now, particularly because we're in a pandemic and we can barely ever get to meet each other and talk with each other face to face, how can we use these trusted networks that we have and that we're developing to be more successful? And when I say success, it's more than just building the pipeline. It's actually closing deals. I think one of the things I keep hearing from everybody is that they're so busy and they've got a great pipeline and all of that. And then when you actually kind of dig the next layer, but I can't close as like I used to, or it's not where it should be. And so when members tell us that, we work with them, one-on-one, and we talk about different ideas and we make more warm introductions. There's a variety of things that actually we'll, I'm sure, be talking about today. There's so many other aspects to this topic. And so what we have is 4 experts who can really bring their unique perspectives and talented perspectives on this topic. All of them have done business across metros and cross borders, and I can't think of a better group to speak with today about this topic to hopefully help you with some ideas and techniques to be more successful. We're going to kick off today with Lucie Newcomb. She's a CEO and founder at Newcomb Global Group. Lucie is one of the most fantastic Globies you'll ever meet. She's in the Bay Area. She's so well connected. She knows everybody, it seems, not just in the Bay Area, but way beyond. She's involved in so many different organizations and so many groups on the business side and also on some other global areas that are not necessarily directly global business oriented. So Lucie, we really appreciate all that you do. We really appreciate you being part of the global tribe. And why don't you kick us off here and give us some thoughts and perspectives to get going. And then once after each of you say a few words, we're going to do a round table and then take questions from the audience.
Great. Thanks so much, Doug, for the overview and the very kind introduction. Well, it's morning here, so I'll say good morning, good day, good evening to everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, Doug, and all here to be on a panel of esteemed experts, and I look forward to contributing and learning a lot too, because I think if the pandemic hasn't created an effect, it's definitely a learning mode as we all kind of watch things unfold and adapt. So as Doug mentioned, I actually have I lead by collaboration. And as a result, I've had the great fortune to have a high trust network from the beginning. And I actually include our customers, partners, everyone in that. We actually, I should explain a little bit further, we are a global business success firm. And what that means is we specialized actually for a long time in the vertical of taking companies overseas. And we still obviously do that. But what I came to realize, especially as we were continuing to work a lot in emerging markets, was that it's a whole other skill set once you get there, which is enough of a substantial challenge. To actually lead once you're there, because you're competing with a mini globe once you're there. So we are global business from the inside out, and that's specializing in global marketing and then global leadership development, which is more of the second part I just mentioned. One of the ways that we engage an alliance network is we actually have an alliance network for my company. And of course, this is one of those times where one learns. I think a lot of us are still going, gee, if I'd have only known, I'd have put this in place or that in place. Not like we actually expected a pandemic. But I'm very grateful that I have had this bias for connecting and collaborating, because it makes it even, I won't say less challenging, but certainly the challenges are more predictable. And we have, as I mentioned, an alliance network for my company. You can go to our website and see the alliances. These are, by and large, folks I've worked with for a long time, that are actually great people as well as experts. One of the things about being in business a long time is you get to get very picky about who you work with and how that goes. And so I'm very grateful with the Global Chamber and Doug being a key part of that. I think at least once a day I get to demonstrate what I would mention as a key aspect of this model is to forward a solution, or, obviously with digital first, my email box is overflowing, and I'm conscious everyone is. But I think one of the ways to nurture an affiliate network, a trusted network, is to just forward a quick opportunity, a solution. Hey, you were worried about this. I saw that. Some kind of just really uplifting the communication. I try not to communicate unless it's value added. Doug can take grievance with some of those communications, but in general, that's, I'm trying to be very mindful that we are now in a digital first, and in many cases, digital only sales scenario. And so as a result, I balance that by reaching out, but also when I'm communicating digitally, I try to make it value added. And I think you'll find, hopefully our panel's comments this morning fall into that category. Global Chamber is a key part of that as well. And I was grateful to be able to connect with Carolina before this comment today and just say, is there anything, she was kind enough to ask, is there anything I can do to support you in the webinar tomorrow? And I did the same. And that's, I think, drawing closer to the affinity network that I have now is key. It's also a great opportunity to draw closer to customers and prospects. And that's part of the change in our sales cycle. I think it's a lot more labor intensive now. Sales cycles are definitely longer, but I see this as an opportunity to get closer to customers, often, seeing their kids and all their life that I don't necessarily normally see. Yeah. And also to get a sense of their pain points of their customers. I should preface that, we are business to business. So all of our customers have customers, and it's a chance to get to understand even more vividly what are their business problems? Because it's one thing to sit in a conversation and say, oh, let's talk about your business pain. And of course, I pay full attention to that and come up with strategic approaches for that. And but it's another thing to really have someone look at you on a Zoom and say, business really sucks, and this is why. And my customers, kids were lost in the fire in Santa Cruz, or, this is a very different time, and customers are going through human being issues as well as, business issues. So it's a really great time, I think, to get closer to the customer in what I hope will be a lasting way, because I'm sincere. When I'm not just asking these things, we have CRM systems that are so brilliant now, but I'm not looking for data. I'm looking to nourish relationships at this time. And the Global Chamber is really terrific in that way. I will mention that I'm also seeing a higher bar for ROI now. As I mentioned, in these communications, I try to be succinct and more value added because we are so digitally overloaded. And I am seeing, here in the Valley in technology marketing, we specialize in tech companies and services companies. We do work with everyone gratefully and delightedly, but in technology, there's some very clear distinctions in how those things get marketed and sold. And cool, and especially here in the Valley, cool has always been something. And of course, we have great companies that do cool very well. But I think part of the value shift that I see happening, we do values coaching, so I'm kind of have an antenna out for that. One of the values I see shifting is cool is good, but ROI is more important. And that means time spent on a call, time on Zooms and emails, all that stuff. So I'm being mindful in the selling with my affinity network, but also broadly to customers, ROI, minutes on the phone, quality time, and kind of understanding what that is, because of course that's going to vary from day to day because our situation is pretty volatile. So all of those points are really key. Nurturing the network we have. I'm always looking for additional allies for this network as well. And so we added someone yesterday. And that helps then, I think, how our partners, I also am launching an initiative where I introduce them to each other. So I'm very grateful to Global Chamber, Doug, and I promise no invoice will come after this remark. I'm very grateful to Global Chamber for giving me a support in the global tribe that I want to build myself and that I hope to nurture myself. As Doug said, in part because that's my personal bias and personal focus, purpose in life, if you like. But also, it's very important for my business as a globally based business. So thanks for this time, and thanks for the chance to offer value back, hopefully. I think stay the course is really the biggest thing that we're all trying to do now. We have, I should mention the final thing I've done is we have launched a webcast monthly called Staying Global While Staying Home, to give people a sense of hope. Between the political environment where globalism was sort of receiving a death sentence and then, you know, the pandemic and other restraints and constraints, I think it's really important to have I'll say a bona fide sense of hope, not just a nice to have, but really a valid thing. You know, global machines are very hard to build, very expensive to build. And this gives us an opportunity to continue to nurture. So we have a monthly webcast with a global leader talking about how they are navigating the pandemic from their particular context. So thank you, Doug, and look forward to hearing from everyone else.
Thank you, Lucie. I love your comments about ROI and its importance, and I've noticed the same thing in terms of people's focus there. The other part that I liked you to confirm is that cool is still good. And so thank you for being cool and the coolness of your backyard. And then that's a great segue to our next speaker, because who's more cool than Larry Harte? I mean, he's really...
Go, Larry.
And I actually, Larry,
no
I didn't realize
needed.
it until now, but I for some reason, I didn't recognize that you were a civil engineer, or that was your background. And so me being a chemical engineer, I'm guessing there's some simpatico that develops through that kind of engineer thing. Larry is well beyond the civil engineering part. He's also not just been a successful business person, but he's also given back to the community. He's been on city councils, and he's been the mayor of Glendale, Colorado, before he turned out and decided he was going to move to Cincinnati and be closer to family. And we're very fortunate that he's now working with Global Chamber Cincinnati and starting that up. One of the things I've noticed in his early days there and his early success actually is you know, a very I was going to say methodical, that's not the right word, just a very thoughtful way that he approaches the market, the way he builds a pipeline, the conversations that he has, and also how quickly things turn with him without a lot of fuss. And so there's something magical that he's doing, and so we thought we would invite him to join the conversation today, because I think he can really contribute. So Larry, thank you for what you're doing, and we look forward to hearing more.
I love it. That sounds good. Thanks. I appreciate all the ROI stuff that you mentioned there, Lucie. I think that it's good to be here, of course, and I'm here to learn too. And we're all focused on the ROI thing. And I think that what I can do is at least just share with you, hey, Cesar, let's hold that for just a few minutes, if we could. And then, because I know, Chris, you asked about that in San Antonio to share a funnel. So I'll share that with you in just a couple minutes. But, you know, I'm happy to share with you what's working for us here. I think we all have kind of a way that we're doing things and whatnot. And if we can all learn from each other and kind of piece together a format that works for us, you know, that's what I'm all about. Sales skills need sharpening, a lot like a knife, regular sharpening. And maybe this is a good example of how we can do that. Certainly we're learning every week. And that outside view that you got going on there, Lucie, it reminds me of, you know, a seed. A seed needs water to grow daily pretty much. And, you know, you think of an acorn, and if you plant that acorn and water it, it's hard to see that growth every day or even every week. But if you water it for months and even years, that's when you can see the results. And so let's hope it doesn't take that long, of course. But what I thought I'd do is just share three things with you, basically. And the first is that facts tell and stories sell. We've all heard that people love to buy, but no one likes to be sold. And making buying decisions emotionally and then justifying those decisions intellectually is kind of how it works. And I think it's worth remembering that emotions propel our decisions, and the logic and reasoning confirms them. And keeping that in mind, people tend to buy from people that they like. So we have to build relationships. And that's really what I'm all about. Use the word nourish relationships. Lucie, I love that. We're here to nourish relationships. So what do we do with that information? What we've been doing here is, and this leads to the second area, which is qualify hard to close easy. And we tried to spend some time qualifying companies and people here in the Cincinnati and Ohio area, trying to find the ones that are a good fit. And we do some research on the prospects. It's easier now than ever, isn't it? You know, with Google and the internet and news articles that are everywhere. And then once we identify those prospects, we put them on a list. And then as we start contacting them, which I'll talk about in just a minute, it's really all about, at that point, identifying the pain. Are they the right decision maker? Do they have the time for this? Can they afford it? Do they have the budget? Are they the decision maker? It really comes down to those three: the money, the time, and the decision maker. And if we can identify the right person in the organization that can accommodate those three things, then that's led us to some of our initial successes and plenty more that are on the horizon, that maybe it's not quite the right time, or we've got to do a little more work to find the right person that can make that decision. So identifying those before wasting a whole lot of time in the process is certainly very helpful. And that leads us to the third thing, which is understanding the sales cycle. And I say this all the time, I'd rather spend my time finding the people that get it rather than convincing those who don't. And Cesar, if you could show that slide now, we'll walk through our sales funnel that we use here, which is around awareness, consideration, conversion, and this advocacy piece. And hang on just a second, gang. And I like to make a game out of it. Can the prospect lead themselves to the next zone by asking questions? And so when we reach out to people, it's only in that awareness phase. Hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm doing now. I took on something new. One of our deputies that I work with, a guy named Nick, likes to say, hey, I got laid off from my last job. So, you kind of build some sympathy around that and then share with them what it is that we're doing now in terms of the global chamber and using all that good information that Doug has put in the standard operations, the SOP, the standard operations procedures that he's put together. But I love it when they ask questions, because if they ask questions, they're interested. And now all of a sudden they're almost into that consideration phase, which is that second level of the funnel. And then the conversation changes quite a bit to answering their questions. And there's lots of frequently asked questions that Doug has provided in our manual to kind of guide those discussions. There's also a great information piece, Doug, that you have in there it's called sales questions, and it's under the big fish thing. And a lot of those questions lead to answers that can guide that process. I think it's worth remembering too, I read somewhere once that only 3%, it's kind of a theory, but only 3% of our audience is ever ready to buy at that time. And that 3% is always changing. So timing is a big part of this thing. And if we can stay organized in just a few minutes a day, really, it's worth reaching out to those people. So what I do anyway, and what we do here, is just keep a top 40 list, and we're reaching out to 10 people a week, nourishing them Lucie style, to keep them, send them something valuable. There has to be something valuable there. We're not here to waste their time. But again, we're only playing at that stage in the top stage one, the awareness stage of that funnel that you see there. So if you're familiar with the sales funnel, we start with awareness, work through consideration. Conversion is the actual sale. And then what we're really after is advocacy. And I'll give you an example of that here in just a minute. But I also want to point out that failure is fuel for fire. And we had a recent failure story that I'll share with you. We'll call her Sally. And it took about 15 minutes or so on the phone for Sally to go through her spiel before we realized she was pretty full of herself. She shared how her business was struggling to find clients, and some of her staff had left recently. And she told us that she just didn't need another network. She already had the Columbia MBA network to tap into. And then she reminded us that Columbia is an Ivy League school. And you kind of get it, I think. After telling us all the troubles that she's having of growing her business, then she doesn't need our help. So I love when that happens. I shared with her in just 1 minute the value of warm leads and trusted connections. And what she ought to think about doing is surrounding herself with people who can advocate on her behalf. That's that final stage of the funnel there. She's so busy telling everyone how great she is, she doesn't give anyone else a chance. And as the CEO, of course, she's going to tell everyone how great her company is. But when other people tell her story, it's a lot more powerful. And that, to me, is the essence of where we're trying to get with the Global Chamber, is who are those advocates that can tell our story on our behalf. And that's what happened with our most recent member that joined yesterday, a guy named Jeff. So I met with Lisa a couple weeks ago. Lisa is at a local chamber of commerce, a smaller chamber of commerce, and she just got it right away how we add value to some of their members. So she introduces me to a guy named Jeff by email. Jeff and I have a quick phone call. We decide to meet. We met yesterday. And Jeff walked himself right through that funnel from awareness, started asking questions about how does it work and could he see himself being a part of this global chamber. And that's that consideration phase. And then it went into what's it take to join and on the website, how that works. And then he joined yesterday and he's already an advocate as of this morning, talking about other members that he'd like to bring in and introduce the global chamber to. So that's someone that moved through the funnel very quickly, 2 weeks roughly. Others, of course, take longer. But in the end, I think if we can consistently keep some of this stuff in mind, you remember that acorn and try to water it every day. And that's the system that we use. So I hope you found that helpful. Chris in San Antonio, I love that you wanted to see that, and we can talk more about it offline, of course. So that's us. That's how we're doing it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Great comments. And one of the, I mean, there were several takeaways there that I marked. The adding value, right? It really just comes down to that. And so that's also a good segue into our next speaker, because Carolina Mello, she's in the Bay Area, and I'm reminded of the story of one of our members in Chicago. The world is a small place, and that really, to me, was if you grew up and you don't add value, you get spit out. Because the global people, they recognize it, and you're not going to get business. And Carolina's been around for quite a while, and she's existed and continued to thrive because she's really good at asking a lot of questions, adding value along the way. And I remember a couple of years ago when I first met her at an event, and she was moderating. And she knew everybody in the room, right? And she was supporting everybody. And those are the kinds of behaviors that Globies do to be successful, or you're not going to be. And so, Carolina, thank you for being part of the global tribe. And we really look forward to hearing your comments today, because you're so good at this.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me, and Lucie, Larry, Cesar. It's been wonderful to get to meet all these people at the Global Chamber, and I really appreciate the work that you do to support all of us. So you did such a great job, Larry and Lucie, that I'm gonna kind of like, yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. So it's so funny when we talk about sales, right? Because when I started, I came from an operations background and then transitioned into sales because I knew the product. And I remember when I got hired into sales, I was like, but I don't want to sell. I don't know how to sell. And it was hilarious because the person that hired me said, wait a minute, you have all this product knowledge, right? And you're good at relationships. You don't need much more. And it's just figuring out as you go. And I thought that was so interesting. And throughout this, course of figuring out how to sell, and you end up finding out that it is not about the sale, it's the relationships. And I think both of you talked about that. And we think about relationships of our partners and our alliances, but it's really our relationships with our clients, right? The customers that we're delivering to as well. So I am a big believer in not trying to sell, trying to develop a relationship with that person. If they came to you, or if you found them and they got on a call, it's probably because a part of them know that they need that. So it's, I think it's like, don't try to reinvent the wheel. It's just, they have a need. It might not be an imminent need. They might not be ready to close now, but how can you be memorable in that conversation? I think the ability of being memorable, of influencing decisions, the persuasion, I actually been reading this over and over again, and I have it sitting with me, so I'm going to show it. It's not propaganda. I don't make anything on this, but it's this book. The Psychology of Persuasion, right? Influence. And if you haven't read that, I think it's an amazing read that was given to me. And I find myself going back to it because we have these behaviors. And I think with the global pandemic, it's been very challenging to all of us. But I think we keep telling ourselves it's such a hard time. It's such a hard time. People are struggling, which is not a lie, it's true. But if we keep going into these calls with that narrative, if we keep thinking that we're all struggling, let's say, you know what, when there's blood on the streets, that's the time to thrive. That's when big companies emerged out of depressions, when economic downturns. And it's just changing the narrative in which you're talking to people, give them hope, be memorable on that call. Make them remember that in the midst of everybody saying how bad it is, you are actually like, no, we can make this right. Our company can assist you. We can go to the next level, and that I think is not only on the sales calls with partners, with developing those relationships. It's like, let's change the narrative of like how horrible this is to how can we all make it out of this stronger? What skills are we going to build from being in the middle of this pandemic, right? So I think clients need to hear that, relationships, alliances, whatever you're building your ecosystem on, people want to hear that. So, and for the client, in addition to that is being a resource, right? And that depends on how you conduct your business. I will gladly get on a call with a client and say, I'm not the right solution for you now. And this is how I can help you with somebody else that can assist you. Or have you thought about this? Or, it's just being a consultant, looking into bettering their business, not just as a quick like, oh, I need to sell you this right now because you need to close with me. Sometimes it's not a good fit. But I'll tell you, that person, when they're ready, they're going to come back. And you can be sure that when they're talking to somebody else, and in the case of Safeguard Global, we help companies expand internationally. We do employer of record services. People can set up an entity if they want. There's a time for employer of record. There's a time for entity setup. And selling this, being aware of the market, that as a consultant to that client. So I think it's our job to make sure that we're assisting these companies, because then you're gaining their trust, not only on that call, but they're going to talk to the next person and the next person. So it's going to become their own referral network. Now, is it a fast thing? Might not be. Are you extending your sales cycles? Yes, you are. But at the end of the day, that all comes back to you. It is, we like to say, it's like connecting people and being able to build that trust amongst all your partners and all your clients. And, at one point you're going to be sitting there and things are just going to be coming at you because you planted the seeds, as Larry mentioned. So you need to plant your seeds. I think that's the most important thing about sales. We think about sales as being this complex thing, but if you trim it down, it's all about emotional, as you mentioned. It's about relationships. It's an emotional decision and then you rationalize it. It all comes down to that. So I think we get too wrapped up in thinking that sales is this big monster. I think it's just being there for people and giving them the information and being able to influence their decisions by using your ethics to do that. Like, is that the right fit? Okay, now if it is, I can tell you why you should use the solution, or why you should go with my company, or why is that important to you, and justifying like that. But there are times that is not a good fit, and I think we need to be honest with that, and bottom line is, you can make one sale or you can make 50. How you build that pipeline is really up to you, because you can invest on the gift that keeps giving, or you can be like, oh, it was a fast sale, great, but it wasn't a great fit. 2 months later, they're gone, and that's what you have. So I think everybody did a great job. I don't want to repeat myself. I had a couple of notes that I was looking at. That's essentially it, being memorable, building that relationship. But I will also say, at a time like this, I think one way of getting in front of people is, and I know this is not cheap, okay, there's ROI issues that go into that, but really donating time. So I also think it's important for an organization, for salespeople, for thought leaders to donate their time to other companies, other initiatives that might not be able to be there. Again, you're getting in front of people, you're helping them with their development, with bringing their company to where they want to go. And again, that will be part of that cycle that will help you in the future, will help them. like buying a cup of coffee for the person behind you. They would do it for somebody else. So once we can start that, we can just move forward. And I do think it's all about helping people. And to some people that might sound a little naive, but we are all in this business for a reason. And I think if you're authentic in your message and you know how to deliver that, that's when you start to see real and lasting results. So I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you for building onto the conversation there, because you added the concept of being memorable, which is so important. And then the being there message that I at least heard from you is very consistent with all three of you talking about adding value. And there's an element of patience there. And there's also the element of the oak tree that Larry talked about, right? Recognizing, where to spend your time for the long run, because we're, at least the global tribe, are in it for the long run. I mean, the global tribe kind of almost by definition is, if we recognize that a member is just kind of like in it for a short term and there's unethical or lack of honesty or authenticity, it's not a good fit for us, because we don't want that. We want trust. And so and there, now we go right back into a nice segue to our final speaker, and that's Cesar Trabanco. I mean, we trust Cesar because he gives a way beyond expectation. He understands value. All of the members who touch him and get support from Cesar, almost 100%. It's like, Cesar is amazing, and Cesar is amazing, and he's a key part, maybe the key part for Global Chamber on a global basis to be successful. So we wanted to have Cesar chat today about his perspectives on a trusted network. He sees members struggling. He sees members be successful, and so by having Cesar give his thoughts, the hope is that you'll gain some insights that he gets on a daily basis. Cesar, thank you for sharing today.
Thank you, Doug, and thanks for inviting me to be a speaker today. It's hard to keep up with that introduction, so I'm going to try to bring a couple of good important points. But before, I just wanted to thank Lucie, Larry, and Carolina. I work with them. I know how hardworking they are, so they're really amazing people to with. So when I saw the topic of the event, I tried to. So I'm not in the selling part per se at Global Chamber. I'm more into the helping members and connections and introductions and all that. But that's part of the sales cycle. So that's part of the value that the member, someone who's paying the membership, gets. And so I also took the perspective from our members, from members that are selling, because I'm there. I'm making introductions. I see how they interact. I see how that goes at the end. And so I wrote down a couple of points, and they definitely overlap with what Lucie, Larry, and Carolina have mentioned, especially with building relationships. But I wanted to give it with some examples specifically related to the pandemic. And so the first one is something we already knew, is that it is important to have a global network, not really like a local one, no matter if you're only doing local business. But the COVID definitely made that important. So no matter if you are just doing local business, interstate business, it is important to get to know people around the world. You never know how or when the rules are going to change. And so that's exactly what happened what's happening with the pandemic. And just to give you an example, we have a member from Vietnam. And so the member, she's been a member for a couple of years. I know she's part of many other organizations, and she's all over connecting with people. And before, she only did business in some particular industry and maybe in some particular region. But now Vietnam is a top notch when it comes to PPE. And now she's all into that business. And thanks to those relationships, she's been able to be successful. She's been able to connect with people. They know who she is. So there's some others, and we've seen, Doug, I know many of you as well, we've seen a lot of people turning into the PPE, turning into all the type of healthcare or medical type of business with the COVID. But then the one who already had a trusted connections with a trusted network is the ones who's going to be successful. And that's something that we've seen during the last couple of months. As in my second point is being part of organizations. It doesn't have to be a business organization or a group. It can be like social, sports, arts, whatever you're into it. I think we always say like you never know who knows whom. So be part of that, even WhatsApp groups. So I've seen locally here where I live, I've seen how being part of the WhatsApp groups has helped restaurants and other businesses during the lockdown. And because they tap in, I mean, they have their social media, they have their ways, but when it comes to family businesses, they might not have the resources that other companies does. And so they tap into WhatsApp, they tap into your personal Facebook. So if you are, as a salesperson, if you're part of different groups, of course, some they would call it as spam, but in times like this, I think things are acceptable. And I've seen some people being successful that way. And versus others that they don't want to be in WhatsApp groups, they don't want to be part of anything, just focusing on something specific. I would say that don't close your mind. You never know when you need that network. And my third point is having, I think it's always, and this goes very related to what the other speakers mentioned, I think it's very important to have a supporter or helping attitude towards your contacts. And an example also during the pandemic is that I wasn't even working with that member at the moment, but for some reason I went to her website and it was down. The website had a lot of issues and I didn't know if she knew about it. So I basically reached out and at the same time I connected her to someone that with websites and all that. And so she came back, I think I heard about her like last week probably, and she was all happy. She started working with the person, the website is much better now. She's reaching out to customers and at the same time the marketing, the digital marketing expert got a new client. And so I thought this was a win-win-win situation. And it wasn't, I mean, she didn't reach out asking for help. It was just that I noticed that I said, oh, she's a member, I should help somehow because I know, Miss, this is a particular time where you really want your website to be strong. So I just jump in and helped. And I think that's really important, not really looking for something in exchange, but looking forward how you can be of value for your clients and for your whole network. And my last point is to have empathy. I think COVID is a time to be empathic and definitely is, I mean, it is hard. I mean, if we go back to March, April, it was hard selling. I mean, in general, like seeing our members connecting and looking for meetings. And so it was a moment where salespeople needed to step back a little bit and say, well, how I need to understand the other party for sure. And this is something that always need to apply, but in the pandemic particularly, you really need to apply it. And it's just understand, ask questions, as Larry mentioned, ask them how they're doing with the pandemic. So, because honestly, some companies, like specifically tech companies, they were doing great. But just in case, ask and see. I mean, probably they're not buying now or in 2 months, but having that empathy and having that relationship would definitely help you in the long term. So I think those were the 4 points I wrote down, Doug. That's the ones that came to my mind when I saw the title and the topic and description of the event. So open to any question and be part of the panel. Thanks again, Doug.
Thank you. Great thoughts. Lucie, I think you've got a comment or two.
Oh, thanks so much, Doug. I just wanted to say that all of us have been talking about relationships, obviously, and it's so key, as we're all saying, even more in the pandemic and for long-term business. There can be a perception about that we are all being nice, and I'll just speak for myself. I absolutely, sincerely want to be extra kind now, but this does not take away at all from me working the sales cycle like Larry, from me hammering qualification, like Larry mentioned also, being memorable. All of the classic sales things are still in play. And so, you know, sometimes one can be dismissed for talking about relationships and kindness and empathy, as all of us have touched on. It's really important, in my view, to have a both and scenario. I have double the industry hit rate for closing business because I do that, I think. We're a services business, so I think it's extra important when there's not a product. What we offer includes kindness, understanding, sincerity, especially in a pandemic. And we still have stuff to sell. We still have, goals to hit and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to mention that I hope I'm not overinterpreting. I think all of us are saying relationship building and all those things, but not at the cost of standard sales metrics. Of course, we might have to compromise. We are in a pandemic. But I just wanted to make that point, Doug, because it's easy to dismiss, relationships and blah, blah. But really, it's a sales skill. Developing relationships is a sales skill. It is hopefully part of my personal value system, but it's absolutely, in my view, a sales tactic also. Not in a insincere way or an artificial way, but hopefully people know I'm a trusted advisor for a reason, not just because I know what I'm doing, because gratefully I hope I do after 30 years, but also because I'm helping them through the sales process the way Larry's model did. So I just wanted to bring that up, that yes, it's a time to really highlight the relationship and the relationship building piece, but that doesn't mean flexibility with sales matrix, I think, is appropriate, but we're not throwing them out the window. Is that right, folks? Would you agree?
I would think they do. And well, maybe we can, each of you, frame up the response to Lucie's question with the additional element of the pipeline that Larry talked about. And Lucie, actually, I'm interested to see how you handle that. Do you have a software that you use? Do you have your own technique? Larry and I have an ongoing conversation that, our technology around pipeline management at Global Chamber is not very sophisticated. So I wonder how it could definitely improve. How do you each handle that, especially things like what Larry talked about, where he's picked the top 40, right, and 10 a week to follow up. So what method do people use to keep up in that way? Lucie, do you have something that you use?
We are in the process of converting to Salesforce. That's
Okay.
what I always recommend when people ask me, and no, I do not have any affiliate type compensation for that, just because I see that. And they are now, actually they have been for a while, offering a small business version. It's my personal recommendation because I think sooner or later a business is going to need that. And as being a business builder, that's always my longer view of, invest once now and not every year going down the road. So that's my personal view. I've been working on CRMs customer relationship management systems for over 20 years. And I think they are really key. I've been blessed with a good memory, but that is not good enough. I know we try to cut corners in small business, but I use my good memory to talk about, people's sick animals and their children and things like that. I want to be very clear where an account stands. And like Larry, I run our accounts through a particular procedure. So where am I here? Where am I there? So I think almost any CRM system is good if you're asking for a recommendation. I like Salesforce because it interlinks with everything very well. Marketo, all the other systems in place. It has a very strong integration play, but that's just my personal view.
Carolina, I'll bet you use a pretty sophisticated one as well.
Salesforce. It really is. I mean, Salesforce, and I agree with Lucie. I think it's good because you can look at your pipeline. You can look, and you know what? We have so much in our minds. We cannot possibly remember everything. And I think, the task, the notices, whenever somebody says, talk to me in December again, you're going to be like, December? What?
Right.
There's anything that happens on Outlook and something shifts and you don't get that notices in Salesforce, or you get a reminder, go talk to this person. You can put your notes. It's all in there, your pipeline, everything that's you think is going to close, the percentage of close rate. So it's just, I think it's, it's there for a reason. And I wish there was somebody else coming in to tell you the honest truth, because I tend to not like when everybody says the same thing, because for obvious reasons of monopoly, but it is, right now it is, the integrations are great. So I do think they do an amazing job at doing that. And I really like some features just copy emails right into it. I don't personally send emails from Salesforce, but there's a link they can attach to your email as you send, and it populates the account automatically with the email. It is just really like BCCing somebody, but it's an email link. And I really like that. I use that all the time because then I don't have to, one, send my emails from Salesforce. I'm not a big fan of that. I know some people like it. And then two, I don't have to like go back and think, when did I send that email? Or I have to search through my Outlook because I'll fat in there. So yeah, definitely, I think it's a great system to do that.
Okay, 2 for 2 Salesforce. Larry, maybe we should be thinking about that. Any other additional comments you want to make
I'll
about
mix it
that?
up a little bit. Sure. I've used Salesforce. I've used a half a dozen probably pretty thoroughly over the last 15 maybe or so years. And I don't really have anything bad to say about any of them. Maybe the most important thing is to use something like you said, Carolina. And I love the whole sales is not a monster thing. I actually wrote that down. That was funny. But you have like to be specific, Doug, about the top 40 thing. That's just what I do. But when you meet somebody, you have to write a few things down, don't you? Or jot a few things down. And what I tend to do is try to always leave with 3. And it could be any 3 things: where they're from, do they have children, what did they talk about, did they like skiing, where did they go on vacation, did they make a comment about the weather, or just whatever. And that's my thing. I try to come up with at least 3 things. And then I'm using HubSpot the most right now. So I use HubSpot for the Global Chamber. It's free and it's a great introduction to a CRM, and they have a ton of resources, just like Salesforce does. There are lots of others to use, and a lot of that is just personal preference. But I'll go in to, like yesterday, I met with this guy, Jeff. I go into his thing at the end of the meeting when I got back to the office, and I typed up a few notes about Jeff, because now as I continue to, as Lucie said, nourish that relationship, I can draw back on those few things from the meeting that I picked up on and add and kind of keep those conversations going with some of those key points. So whether it's someone that's already a member or anywhere in that funnel, you can tap into those things that you've identified and stored in your CRM system and then go back in that. I think the other value is, as you all have pointed out, is all the stuff that's in the CRM, the emails, and how it collects all of that information. And before you make that phone call, or maybe before that meeting, it's worth it to take what could be just a minute or 2 to scan that and make sure you have a couple of good talking points to pick up on and carry on and continue those conversations with. So that's how I use it.
Great. The one kind of the next layer of this, at least in my own mind, is, Larry, what you talked about relative to the advocacy part. So I'm curious how you each manage those people. First of all, how do you get people to that stage? And then how do you manage them once they're there? Because Larry, what you said was really valuable, right? It is like we can one-on-one talk to a lot of different people, but if we've got these nodes of advocates out there, it's tremendously powerful. So I'm curious, Lucie and Carolina, and you, Larry, how do you get people to that stage, and then what do you do when they're there?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So maybe I'll just start real quick to tag on and that you all jump in, but it's really the same way. You can use the CRM to tag your next interaction. So the people that I met with yesterday, phone calls, again, I met with that guy, Jeff, I'll tag in there. All right, when is the next follow-up for them? And I'll go in there and set a task that'll pop up on that day. So let's say it's next Thursday, and that'll be a reminder to do something for Lisa or any of these people. And it's managed really the same way. You want to nurture, or at least I do, I want to nurture those relationships with very specific tasks. So there's always a next steps section in there. And what are those next steps? In this case, I want to introduce him. We identified 2 different companies that I want to introduce him with. And so to answer your question in the shortest possible way, Doug, I think it's always have next steps for those people that are at that stage, because you can get very specific about an introduction that you want to make to somebody else. And then that leads to another one. There's always another one. And if nothing else, it's a follow-up that says, hey, it's been a couple of weeks. Let's go have a beer or get together for some coffee or something. There's always a next step, though. That's my answer.
Really important. Cesar, Carolina, and Lucie.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few things, Doug. So one thing that I forgot to mention for salespeople in general, even, you know, even your SDR, your alliances, like whatever, you know, whoever you are, everybody these days have a LinkedIn. And if you're on sales, I think you need to beef up your LinkedIn a lot, right? So this is like how people are going to keep you in mind. Like, and I heard this many times, and it's so true. Connect to everybody that you meet, right? Because, and another thing that I think is changing and is challenging for a lot of us is developing our personal branding. We, you know, as a society, we think it's bad to self-promote, or we're like, if somebody is posting something a little different, you're like, oh, what are people gonna think, you know, and the whole video thing. But now more than ever, salespeople, all levels of organization need to develop their personal branding, right? If you're not doing that in today's world, you're going to fall behind. And it doesn't matter what organization you belong to, these skills is transferable, because your clients, your network is going to jump with you across companies because you develop that so strongly. Another thing is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? That's where you can connect people, you can tag people, you can ask for warm introductions, you know, and really use the tools that we have available. And in this era of video, like just when it comes from a client interaction, I forgot to mention that, but I'm kind of going back and trying to tie all the loose ends, is when my clients send me, oh, call me, or do this, or send a link invite that I know it doesn't, it's just like a phone, a dial in, I email them back and say, can we do a video call? I really push. And I'm like, if they say, oh, but I don't have the link, I was like, no problem, I'll send you a Zoom, you know, and trying to get in front of them, because if I'm just a voice on the phone, who never had a problem with the power energy and call them and say, this is unacceptable. But the moment that you see somebody's face for whatever reason, you're like assimilating. I can see the way you're moving your eyes, the way you're behaving, like your body posture is. I can tell if you're open to the message or if you're not open to the message. And now is the time that we can actually do that. So I think, I'm sorry, I kind of stepped back and into the CRM, but I agree with everything that Larry said. I didn't need to really expand on that. But we just want to add these couple pieces that I think are very important too when we're thinking about sales, individual and company. So, you know, and also developing the company brand that will like help in everything. So focusing on the marketing side, because that is so much of, you know, your everything, like just being able to be in front of your customer, right? Your public relations, like how good are you at doing that? Because now is the time to beef up that. Like that will all help sales flow into the organization. So kind of went around from the CRM, but I just wanted to make these couple things that I had notes on. Want to reference them back.
Oh, it's great. I love the rapport mention that you have, because it goes to value, it goes to the memorable part that you talked about, it goes to feeling good, it goes to being trusted and having a trusted network, and living every day so that you're kind of surrounded with people that you like. You know, why not? You know, that's all a good thing. Lucie, you do that really well.
Thanks so much, Doug. Very kind of you. Yeah, I think going back to what Larry said, it's important to understand, and I promise not to get too marketing geeky, since that's a lot of what I've been doing for many years, that there's actually a MarTech stack, and that different tools do different things. So we're talking a lot about CRM. There's also marketing automation. So when I talk about integration with Salesforce, that's what I'm talking about. So things like Marketo, the core business of HubSpot, and other things are separate tools entirely. So if you're starting to look at these tools, I really suggest taking a lot of research time to figure out, what do you need now? What are you going to need in a few years? And to consider your ROI from that point of view, because the CRM system is not the same as marketing automation. And I like I said, I'll keep it brief, but it's important to understand all those different things. And then from the advocacy point of view that you're asking about here, Doug, I try to amplify my trusted networks social media a lot. I also try to use social media instead of email where I can, because as I said earlier, it's digital first for everything, digital first for sales, digital first for communications. So rather than write someone a thank you note, if I think it will help their business more, I actually, like, you know, I'm invited to a lot of nice women's leadership panels like this today. I will often, instead of writing Doug a thank you note, I'll actually do a thank you with our pictures on social media, less in his email box, more amplification of him and his work. At least that's what I'm going for. That's what I hope.
Great idea. I love that.
A lot of different ways to connect with people these days, technically, isn't there? And so,
Well,
why not
and
use
really,
all?
and relieve a little bit of the inbox is the idea also. So it's, I hope it's a double win. That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah, it's refreshing. I sent out some letters a month or so ago and got such a positive response from people, for pretty low tech, but it's another way of connecting with people. We've only have about 5 minutes left. And so Cesar, I want to make sure that you have a chance to catch up on the questions, and then we'll go through kind of a wrap up. So I'd like to kind of come back to each of you to kind of finish up with kind of wrapping up on some key points that you want to emphasize, or maybe some other things that you'd like to talk about. Cesar, do you want to catch up on some of the concepts we've talked about? Because you handle and deal with thousands of people. I don't think in all the time you've been with Global Chamber, since nearly the beginning, I've ever heard a negative comment about you. It's all been positive. It's like unbelievable. So that's incredible. So how do you do that and manage all of that? And certainly a lot of it is attitude, but there's also some things that you do administratively, I'm sure, that keeps you maintaining such a positive perception.
Yeah, so thanks, Doug. I think they say here that your personal issues, you keep them at home. So if you have any issue with someone or any problem, you just don't demonstrate it. And I think part of the value is always try to help people as much as we can. And so that's part of it. I wanted to mention and catch up with a little bit with the comments and from the rest of the panelists. And so we were talking about building the relationship and then automation and the CRM. And I think it is always important to definitely, as Carolina mentioned, to know the person, to try to first, before the pitch, try to learn about that person. And one of the issues, I'm always, as I mentioned, I'm always in the middle of a lot of interactions. And so I'm helping some members selling to people that I know. So I know both parties, and I find myself in situations that when I see, they kept copying me in emails, I send a personal note to the salesperson, like, hey, well, of course, in the cases where I feel confident to do that, I recommend a different way to approach the other person. I think that's a plus because I know both, but I think that comes to the point that you really need to know the person first. Find a way. Carolina mentioned about video conference, so it is. I think that's key. There's a lot of automation in the process, and we're connecting them to prospects, and they just send the same email to everyone. If you make 15 connections, the same email to the 15 people, and that's something I think is wrong. I think is you need to find ways. Sometimes, and I know, Doug, you do the same. When you know there's a connecting point, probably a college, they both went to the same college, so they're from the same town. I always try to use some sort of connecting point. If I don't know the connecting point, I invite the salesperson to find a way. They can connect on LinkedIn first. They can try to read about the other party, but definitely try to avoid that automatic email like yes, thanks, Cesar. Nice meeting you. Let's connect. Something like that I think there's always part of the advocacy from my side is to invite. And I invite them to take action, and it's just not the sales action, but the action to connect and integrate that person with the prospect. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay. And it also is based on the premise that people respond, right? The first step is
that's part of the way is inviting them to respond. That's what you want to achieve. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, it's the power of Puerto Rico, man. That's what it is.
All the professionals on this line, I would bet we're all frustrated by others who don't respond, right? Because we are, we care and we respond. And, if something is sitting in my inbox for more than 48 hours, I'm like, I go crazy, but that takes thought process, right, to be able to do. We only have just a couple minutes left. And so what I'd like to ask each of you is maybe just give a 30-second wrap up. And then we're not going to cover everything on this topic, obviously, but I think this is a great start. We're going to have a wrap up of this conversation in a blog post. I'm actually going to write another or finish a blog post on trust and trusted networks. And then I'm sure we'll have another one of these. So Lucie, would you like to go first in terms of any wrap up that you'd like to do?
Well, thanks so much, Doug. It's been really terrific to be able to crystallize my own thoughts about this topic and then to hear everyone else's ideas here. So thanks yet again for a super opportunity, Doug. I would just say to encapsulate my thoughts that this is not a time to let your sales skills down, but in time actually to sharpen the saw, as Stephen Covey would say. And then to emphasize really the relationship piece. And especially in my business as a trusted advisor, if you take a company global, that is a huge act of trust. If we should bring someone into leadership coaching, huge act of trust. To really, first of all, be clear in oneself and do whatever self-management is needed to make sure that in a pandemic, I'm fully available. And then to really drill down on what customers and affiliate partners need at this time, and to stay close while adding value. It's kind of a very subtle dance to stay close and add value, which also can mean adding, less time and less restraint at certain times. Be really clear about what's needed in the moment and be agile and flexible, because that can change at any given day. And a trusted network partner may need to just talk that day about what's going on and just step out of the sales role. And that's okay too. And, without making too much of a commercial, never have I found the Global Chamber more valuable. I had to cancel our 2 biggest business trips this year for obvious reasons. We're looking at the Middle East in early Q21, and I'm really looking forward to expanding my Global Chamber opportunities there. So it's really a time of holding on to hope and giving others genuine hope while closing business that is both short-term and long-term oriented.
Fantastic. Give hope and value a chance. Thank you very much. Larry, how about you?
I'll just say, let's not forget to have fun in this whole deal. I said this earlier, it's a lot more fun. I think it's better to spend your time looking for those people and spending your time with those people that really get what we're doing with the Global Chamber, rather than spending it trying to convince those that don't.
That is so amazing. We're doing a Global Excellence Award next, in about 2 weeks. And as we were putting together that, I was thinking, in particular, some people, it's like, wow, I just, that person is amazing, and not only what to add value every day, but they're just so fun to work with. And so such a key point. Let's not lose fact. Even if you're a civil engineer originally, or a chemical engineer like me, we can still have fun. It's
yes.
okay.
That's what we're doing.
We will tell no one. We will tell no one, Doug and Larry. We'll keep that to ourselves.
Carolina, I don't think you're an engineer, but I bet you have fun almost every day.
I do. I try to keep it light like Larry. I believe that ultimately you show up the way you feel. So you just try to feel good so you can show up in the way that you want for your clients, for your partners, and for your personal life and everything else. Life is much more fun, and it doesn't need to be hard. We really make it hard, and it's like there is beauty in everything, and you can find the fun in just like daily tasks. So being light, I think it's like the key to all of this and the crazy world that we're living in today. Thank you, Doug, so much. I do appreciate, like everybody else on the call, you have done a fantastic job in connecting all of us with building this amazing global community, resources for people to tap into, and so many, great professionals, so much knowledge. And I really appreciate all the work that you do, number one. And then I would say, I think the takeaway is for salespeople to be able to improve sales skills and sales within the company really comes down to every single individual just bettering themselves and just really developing skills, investing in themselves and the talents that they have, and being able to bring that to the customers, their clients, and the relationship. So I think once you do invest in yourself, it's a great time to sharpen your skills, like many said here. And use that time to do that, maybe do a different course and read a book. There's so much knowledge out there. takes as little as a YouTube video sometimes to give you a fresh thought on something. So it really is, for me, the relationship part. I think we hammer on that so much, but really developing the self and the sales skills, because it will always come back once you know how to foster those people and those connections.
Fantastic. Cesar and I are working on a book that will incorporate this topic. Are there any books in the last year that have impacted you?
Asking me?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were still talking to me, Doug. I apologize.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Carolina.
No, please go ahead. I already got a book out today. I'm good with one per session.
Oh, okay. I got you. Cesar, how about you? Wrap up comments?
Yeah, no, thanks again, everyone. I also learned a lot from the three of you, and I think I just wanted to leave you all with a positive vibe. I think that if we have all survived this, and as salespeople, we definitely survive the next 10, 15 years. It's just a matter of learning. If you need to switch vehicles and resources or the way to do things, it's just, as Carolina mentioned, those resources that are at your hands. So thanks again.
Yeah, there's the old saying, right? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or I think there's a better way to say it. But you know, that March, April timeframe, Cesar, that you talked about, I think all of us were, you know, that was just a terrible time, and the pandemic is a horrible thing, still maintains a horrible thing, especially even when you talk to people around the world. There are countries that are quite still tightened down and in bad shape, and so there's still a long way to go. But in the meantime, there are signs of hope, and each of you have given us some hope in terms of how we might be able to improve the way we act on a daily basis and be more successful, add more value. I think one of my takeaways is the reason why all four of you are so good is you do have that value proposition, and you don't think of it as sales so much. You think of it as adding value, and you want to give, right? You want to help, and that makes you feel good, that it helps other people, and it's also fun. You know, so it kind of brings in all of the different concepts that you all talked about. We went a little bit over, so I apologize for that, but I think hopefully you all enjoyed, you know, what you heard today. I certainly did. We'll do a wrap up of this. Just a very sincere all four of you for what you've shared today, and including your time, but really the expertise and knowledge and all that you bring to the table was kind of all out on the table today. And I think all of us benefited from that. Thanks everybody who attended as well. I'm Doug Brunke of Global Chamber. Thank you, Cesar. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Carolina. And thank you, Lucie. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.